I am Ellen Stellian, the Midlife Empowerment Coach, and today I am thrilled to introduce Martha Rhodes. So Martha spent over 25 years working in several major New York advertising agencies as a senior level executive. That all changed in 2009 when she succumbed to depression and overdosed on Xanax and alcohol in an unsuccessful suicide attempt. Her book, 3,000 Pulses Later, describes her challenges with undiagnosed, untreated, drug-resistant depression and her struggle to find an alternative to antidepressants that failed to relieve her symptoms. Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation, or TMS for short. Martha is a TMS advocate for patients who contact her from throughout the United States, from as far away as Europe, South America, Canada, the Middle East, Australia, and South Africa, through her website. She has presented internationally in the United Kingdom, in Wales, and in England, where she participated in the National Health Service's official TMS launch. So Martha, welcome. I've so been looking forward to our conversation, and I so appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Ellen. I always appreciate the opportunity to share not only the story, but the hope that we can give to patients who are struggling. So.
Thank you for that. And you really are on a mission, and I'm just so glad that you agreed to be on today. So to start us off, I would love to understand a little bit like when you first understood that you were depressed. And for those who've never experienced depression, what does that feel like? And I'm sure there's different kinds of depressions, but I assume yours was major depression.
Well, I mean, I can remember when I was about 13 years old, taking a handful or bottle of aspirin. So at age 13, I was clearly experiencing depression with suicidal thoughts. Obviously, a bottle of aspirin isn't going to do it, but I think that it was talked about then, back in the 60s. It was not identified by my parents or a doctor. They said I had a nervous stomach, and they gave me a pill for a nervous stomach. But it was part of the depression was all this discomfort. Well, in the meantime, I got on with life and became an overachiever and got busy, raising a family and having this job in New York. And I never realized how sick I was. I went to a psychiatrist at one point. I had a dissociation, and a support group that I was in said, you need to see a psychiatrist, who did prescribe Zoloft, a very powerful antidepressant that took me from a size 8 to a size 16. So if that wasn't depressing, I don't know what is. So I took myself, and also it numbed me. I mean, the side effects, these are very powerful drugs, these antidepressants. I don't disparage them because they do work for people, and I'm very grateful for that. But for me, the side effect was just intolerable. So I went to a GP, and she prescribed another antidepressant, and that worked for a while. It did work for a while, but she upped me to the maximum she could prescribe. And at that point, because my depression had gotten so severe, now this is when I was in the stressful job in New York. And when you're in high stressful situations, your cortisol levels increase. That's what happens chemically in the body. And the higher your cortisol levels are, the more you are opening the door for an episode of depression. So at any rate, I finally took myself off of that medication. And that was when I stayed on it thinking, wait a minute, I've got a great job, a long-term marriage, 2 great kids. What more could a girl ask for? So because I was taking this happy pill every morning that this last doctor had to prescribe, I thought, well, I must be the most ungrateful wretch on the planet, that I have what looks to be a perfect life. And yet I became my own judge, jury, and executioner because I considered myself the most ungrateful wretch on the planet. And that's where that slippery slope occurred for me. And the other piece of it was, as I'm taking this pill that's ineffective, I increased my alcohol intake. I was creating a perfect storm. And that's what led to the night in February of 2009, where I overdosed and just wanted, I just, I say it's the easiest decision I ever made. It's a non-decision. When you want out, you're crying uncle. It's as if, oh yeah, this is what's next. It's very peaceful. Attempting suicide is nothing that I am proud of. As a matter of fact, I'm ashamed of it that I did this. But when you're in that moment, when a patient is in that moment of, oh no, this is what's next, it's like falling off a log. It's just an easy, oh, okay, so this is what we do now. No drama. It's very quiet. It's very personal. And that's why when you have a loved one or anyone that starts sort of going into that quiet place of isolating and not really paying attention to life, red alert, red alert.
Yeah. Well, it sounds so it's different, obviously, than just, sadness, or you just are having a hard day or a hard week or even a hard few months or something. It's just situational. Something's happened in your life and you're grieving a loss. Or what takes it to the level where there is that total lack of hope that makes you feel like I would rather just not be here. I am in so much pain that I just can't be in the
I call it cancer of the soul, because there's no tumor, there's no broken bone, there's no rash that you can assign this to. It's this most disgusting feeling that when you wake up in the morning, it's picture this: you've got the worst job in the world with a boss who's a nightmare, and it's Monday morning and you got to get out of bed and face this job that you hate. It's that kind of I call it the ugh feeling. It's a pulling and just, why did I have to wake up feeling? And it's it's hard to describe it. Trying to describe what depression feels like is trying to describe what it's like to push a baby out or have a sexual orgasm. Unless you've had it, unless you've experienced it, it's very hard to get others to understand how disgusting this illness really is. And it's an illness. It's a medical illness. So it's not something someone's making up in their head, which is another problem with this dreadful illness, is that it doesn't get the airtime, if you will, of cancer or hypertension or diabetes or,
Right. And it sounds like it's not, I mean, it's an illness. So just like we medicate and treat in the physical illnesses, it just sounds like, why are we not treating major depression and suicidality with that same attention and willingness to look at it as not something you just power through, get over, buckle up and just, you can do this. Because I hear that as a response a lot when people think about depression, is just like, well, you'll feel better if you just, why don't you go out for a jog? Why are you sitting at home? Why don't you go out for, if you just, like, doing is not the solution necessarily, like you need medical treatment.
Medical treatment. And you also need to somehow grab, you have to own it, that you have to own this illness. It's not something anything can do for you. But with that said, you have to also go on a mission to find the tool that's going to work for you. For me, it was TMS, Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation, but for others, it is medication. For others, it is DBT, or ECT, the electric convulsives. All of them are tools, and TMS is nothing more or nothing less than a very, very effective and safe tool.
So I'm going to ask you about TMS, but first I'm going to give a quick shout out to Lori Harms-Weber, who's here from Suquamish, Washington, I think it is. She also says, when a person wakes up feeling like what Martha is describing and you haven't even had a chance to think about the day, it's really hard to figure out how to feel better. Yeah, it's just, it sounds like nearly impossible to figure out how to feel better when you're so low and down.
Oh,
Yeah. We also, I'm just going to say, we also have Rosalind Ann here, who says Martha is one of my inspirational people, and Julie Millett Clark is here from Middlebury, Connecticut. So thank you for being there, ladies. Yeah, so Lori makes a good point about, how do you figure out how to take care of yourself when you are at such a low point in your life? And I do want to hear some more about the things you tried. I mean, I don't know if TMS was, after the Zoloft, after the suicide attempt, then was TMS the first thing that you tried?
No. I ended up in the hospital. They assigned me to a doctor who put me on what I call the medication merry-go-round. And I was on 6 different medications. And not only did I not feel better, I felt worse, or the side effects were bizarre, intolerable. So I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but I took myself off of the medications because I just couldn't take it. And I had come through the suicide attempt, and I thought, well, what am I going to do next? Well, this is where the miracle of life comes in, and this is one of the handful of miracles that I've been blessed with. My sister was just in a dentist office. She's going through a magazine and she found an ad, treat your depression without medication. And that is the only reason that I knew about transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I immediately got on the case, called the Institute of Living in Hartford, which is where I go, and had an hour-long meeting with this wonderful doctor there who did determine that I was a candidate for it. You have to have failed at least one, and sometimes 2 antidepressant medications for proper dosage and duration to qualify for the insurance to cover it.
Oh, okay. But because then you're considered treatment resistant.
Yes.
Treatment resistant,
And
right?
by the way, and I'm glad you mentioned treatment resistant. In the DSM-5, which is the Bible that the psychiatrists use to diagnose patients, and is this thick, the DSM-5 has, in fact, a diagnosis for refractory, also known as treatment-resistant depression. It's not some little tag-on thing that, well, maybe it's real. Just as major depressive disorder is real, refractory major depressive disorder is real.
Right. And so that's why if you need to be kind of diagnosed with that version in order to then justify to insurance that you're going to get TMS, that they, for them to reimburse.
Right. And the good news is that there is not a state in this country that does not have at least one insurance company that now covers it. Now, when I started my journey with this back in 2009, 2010, it was only considered investigational, experimental. So I had to appeal. I appealed once, was denied. I appealed twice, I was denied. But in Connecticut, when a patient is denied coverage for anything, that case has to be sent to an IRO, independent review organization. And so when they got my case, they said, oh no, you do need to cover this. And but it was a very difficult time, because I don't know where I got the wherewithal, how I got the wherewithal to write these letters, which I think were pretty darn good considering I was just a shell of a woman. And I would take it down to the post office with certified mail, return receipt requested, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd come home and go to bed and cry for 3 days. They're never going to read it. It's going to go to the bottom of the pile. So it was a real roller coaster. But mine was the first case in Connecticut to be approved for TMS. And thereafter, the Blues, as they call them, the Blue Cross Blue Shields, led the way across the country, beginning to realize that this was a very viable, safe, FDA cleared in 2008 treatment.
So I would love to hear more about what exactly do they do to you? What is TMS and what do you go through? Is it scary? Is it painful? And how long does it take? Just give us.
Those are all great questions. Okay, so in a nutshell, it is based on this thing called Faraday's Law. And I'll give you the civilian Reader's Digest version of this. Faraday's Law basically states that when an MRI strength magnetic pulse comes in contact with matter, a little electric spark occurs. Your neurons look like this. They actually, it's ironic. They have these long arms and then these little nodes, and they're supposed to talk to each other. They give off and they pick up, and they give off and pick up neurotransmitters. When that's not happening, when that conversation, if you will, isn't happening between your neurons, you're having a depressive episode. The MRI strength pulses are delivered through a machine. Sometimes it's a helmet, but in the case of mine, it was the NeuroStar, the Neuronetics NeuroStar, is placed against the left prefrontal cortex of the head. There's a computer, it's all calibrated, your dosage is all figured out ahead of time.
You don't have to like shave your head or anything. I mean, it's
no.
Straight on it. Yeah.
It's a device that's about this thick, and then you're sitting in a spa chair. It's very relaxing. I watch TV, and the pulses are delivered every 4 seconds, and then off for 26 seconds, on and off, on and off. And it's that delivery to the targeted area of the brain where depression basically lives that gets those neurons talking to each other. And it's cumulative. So it starts at the outermost part of the brain and moves. That's why you have to go 5 days a week for 4 to 6 weeks to get the full course, the initial full course. The only pain, it feels like if you have a brother or a bad cousin who gives you noogies on your head, it feels like that. It's a very intense tapping. I would take a couple of Tylenol before my treatment because it's startling. And also when you're depressed, physical contact, like I love a foot rub, but even then I was so depressed that anything physical bothered me. And so the sensation of the tapping is exaggerated, let's put it that way, because of the depressive state. But other than that, I mean, there's no side effect. I drove myself back and forth. I had no tummy upset or anything. Some people say they get a headache after their treatment, but I think some of those headaches are the anxiety of anticipating you're getting your brain zapped. Right. I mean, the only side effect I have is a bad hair day, because
the helmet head.
They put this thing on you, and so your cute little fluffy hairdo gets kind of smushed down. Right. It's quick. Now they've got it down to a 20-minute session. Mine were 37.5 minutes to get the 3,000 pulses, which is why I titled the book 3,000 Pulses Later, because every session is 3,000 pulses delivered to the brain that are waking up these neurons. And as it's cumulative, so it starts at the outermost and it goes deeper, deeper, deeper down to the amygdala, hippocampus, where all the action is in your brain. Now, the people say, well, I don't have the time for this. Well, like I said, you can get a treatment in 20 minutes, 37.5 minutes. It takes longer to get a mani-pedi than it does to do this. So a long lunch hour, you could get a treatment with this.
Yeah, so this has been approved by the FDA and it works. Like, when did you start feeling better? Like, how long did it take?
Well, I mean, I had what I call the FUD factor. I went into this thinking, I call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD factor.
Yeah. And
because I'm thinking, this is my last resort. If this doesn't work, what am I going to do? I mean, where else can I go? I was afraid at the time of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. I have since experienced ECT for when I had a relapse and needed a faster responding treatment, but that's very brief treatment. I think I woke up, I had my 19th therapy treatment on a Friday, and I woke up on a Saturday morning and I thought, oh, something's missing. And then I realized, oh, I don't have to drive an hour and a half to Hartford today. And then I realized, wait a minute, no, the light in the room was brighter. The colors were brighter. And other patients have reported this, that their perception of color is just enhanced. And I went to the mirror and I said, I still look pretty awful, but I did say, maybe this is the lift that the doctor was telling me about, that I had this feeling of lightness. And I remember going out to the kitchen where my husband was having a cup of coffee, and I didn't want to say, oh, I'm cured. I didn't want to jinx it, but I had this feeling of what I call okayness. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I feel okay. Like I can do this today. I can do this. Now, let me tell you, it was very subtle but unmistakable. There were no marching bands coming through the bedroom that morning, and the heavens did not open up with angels singing hallelujah, hallelujah, right? But it was, like I said, subtle but unmistakable feeling of just this lift. Now, before second week into my treatment, I had a dip, and that they have since discovered it, because I was one of the first patients to do this back in 2010. They the dip, you think, oh my gosh, this isn't working, I feel worse, when in fact it's an indication. I've spoken to doctors about this and they kind of agree. They said, it's an indication that the brain is waking up. So these emotions start to come up, and you just start getting emotional. Well, it's because you've been numbed by the fog of depression, and now that you're getting your brain stimulated, all of a sudden you are having feelings again. So
That's amazing. And do you need to maintain it? Like once you're done with your course of treatment, is there like a yearly checkup kind of thing, or how does that
yeah,
work?
you do. Here again, it's a tool. It's not a cure.
Okay.
Um, I finished my first course back in 2010, and I think it was it was in June. So I had the summer, and I at one point realized, oh my gosh, I was with a group of people and I found myself laughing, and I thought, I just laughed. That was like
Mhm.
huge. Um, what I what I then got worried about were the holidays, November, December. So I spoke with my doctor, and I went for what they call booster treatments or maintenance. And now we call them relapse prevention. So
Okay.
I did 2 at the end of that first year. And then I went into the next year, and my doctor said, we're going to line up 6 treatments. If you need them, we'll use them throughout the year. And I may have used 3 or 4 of them. My second year, now I just had my 11-year anniversary. So of using TMS, that's
Yeah.
keeping me from jumping off a cliff. Let's say,
Yeah.
um, I have had relapses, well, and the relapses come when I don't follow my rules. And my rules are no alcohol. I will have a glass of wine with dinner, but when I say alcohol, I'm talking about I was drinking slugs of
Right.
vodka and that. Um, uh, avoid stressful situations. Again, with the cortisol levels jumping up, I try to avoid stress. I keep away from toxic people because they can work on your brain and bring you down. I do good to feel good. I put the attention over there, so that as I'm doing good, I'm helping my own psyche by feeling good. Um, I try to eat well, a healthy diet, and try to stay away from too much sugar and junk, but and exercise is the thing that I'm still working on, but I will get that one down too. But
Yeah.
it's basic stuff. It just self.
Is that what you need to, like, does everybody have to figure out once they're stable with their depression, what their triggers are and what they need
Yeah.
to do or avoid? Or is that what TMS people recommend after you've had the treatment? Or I just didn't know if it was, specific to you or kind of to TMS or to depression in general.
Think the depression in general, but I will say that it took me a few years to recognize what my symptoms were, and to know that, oh, I better get on the phone and I better get up to Hartford and get maybe a single treatment. My doctor has sometimes said, come for 4 days in a row. She said, or another time she said, come twice a week for the next 4 weeks. It varies depending on what my levels on my depression rating skills are. But here's the key: you got to know your symptoms. You got to know you're going down the tubes.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm thinking about dead people who have passed on, and I start ruminating and thinking of them and feeling the missing and the grief of them, that's one. When I'm feeling, I have a short fuse, I'm irritated and weepy at the same time. That's another symptom that I'm going, oh yeah, my cortisol levels must be up and my depression is rearing its ugly head. And the third one is, it's that uck feeling, that waking up every morning feeling like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. And so those are, and so everyone, now those are mine, but someone else might have a completely, they might start overeating or not having any appetite at all. Or you have to look at what are the symptoms of depression, identify the ones that resonate for you as a patient who has been diagnosed with depression, or maybe not diagnosed, but take a look at these, because the increase in depression has, I'm not going to say skyrocketed, that sounds a little dramatic, but it has increased.
Well, and certainly with COVID hasn't helped. I mean, that's been
Right.
wreaked havoc with people's mental health in general, and anxiety and depression have definitely soared.
Right.
And so when you talk about it's not a cure, it's a treatment, and there might be some maintenance or I can't remember what you called it, relapse prevention.
Yeah.
But are you also working with a therapist? I mean, it's not just, just like when somebody is depressed and taking medication, usually it's medication in conjunction with therapy, whichever kind of, talk therapy, other kind. So I don't know if that's part of the protocol also, when they don't, or they just take you in the TMS treatment center and it's okay if you're not going through therapy.
They don't require it, but if you have a good therapist and that's part of your support system in your world of being a depressed patient, I say hang in there with that therapist. Now, I completed with my therapist, who, by the way, my talk therapist, who was extremely supportive of me trying this. And again, at the time I did it, it was still experimental investigational, but she was all in for me. And then we came to a closure. But recently I went back to see her because I had some little cranky issues that kept coming up in my little brain talking to myself. And I thought, I'm going to go make an appointment with Susan. And we spent about 6 sessions, working it out. And so again, it's just you've got to have your plan. You've got to know what it is that serves you to not go into that horrible, horrible, depressive tunnel. I call it a cave. I go into a cave, and the isolating, not answering phone calls, not being interested in having a conversation with anybody, being short-tempered, and by the way, everyone thinks, not everyone, many people think when you're depressed, you're crying all the time, you're sleeping in bed and you're never going out and you're just in this place of, well, guess what? With my depression, now mind you, I started when I was 13 probably.
Yeah.
I had 5 jobs. I was a workaholic in high school. One of the symptoms of, or one of the way depression can demonstrate is being super busy, the opposite of couch potato, the opposite. And Abraham Lincoln, he had depression. He got so busy, he became president of the United States, and dealt with a big war. I mean, I was that. I went up a ladder in the New York advertising industry that I hadn't even planned on, but because I had this way of covering up the pain by being busy, taking on anything. You got a project for me? I can do that. I can do that. And I would never know that in my brain, in my heart, I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. But it was just all about staying so busy that I didn't have to deal with the pain.
Yeah. It's an avoidance, right? It's like, how are we going to avoid the pain? And different things work for different people who get into avoidance. I mean, for some people, it might be drinking or overwork or gambling or who knows what. It could be what looks positive to society. Oh, look how successful she is. She's devoted to her work, and look how high she's climbing. That all looks good from the outside, but I think it's such an important point that you raised, because I think most of us think somebody who's depressed is just going to be like, can't get out of bed depressed. And I mean, that's, there is as Lori mentions in the comments, functional depression. I mean, it is a high functioning version of depression that, and then it sounds like it's even scarier, because then you have no outward signs. So the people around you may not fully understand that you're depressed or be able to reach out or say, hey, what's going on? And then you can spiral and just hit the wall.
People were shocked when,
Right.
and so was I, when I woke up in that hospital room after 2 days of, surviving the suicide attempt. What, Martha Rhodes? I mean, she has her act together. She's like buttoned up. But it would be like waking up in the morning, going through the routine, going up in the elevator, going around the corner. I managed 30 or 40 people with big budgets, and I would walk around that corner, and I remember I would look at the wall as I made the hall down to where my group area was, my office, and I would look at a switch on the wall, and I would like mentally flip that switch, and then it would be like, hey everybody, and it was just, but before I got to that point on the wall, it would be like, I call it emotional nausea. Emotional nausea. When you're gonna throw up and you go, I don't want to throw up.
The file's coming up. Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Well, this depression is kind of like being nauseous, but with your emotions, emotional nausea, where you're just like trying to just keep it down and not let it go, and that emotional nausea takes its toll. I mean, it's exhausting. It is exhausting. By the end of the day, after I would flip that switch and manage this department in advertising and then get back to my apartment, I would be absolutely drained from I call it my game face.
Yes.
Drained from keeping that game face on all day. And that was when I would drink, because I was, it was a perfect storm, a totally perfect storm.
So Tanya's with us and says your book is amazing, and Elsa also said that you're the reason that her husband got treatment and got TMS. So she's so thankful for that. So that's amazing. And Rosalind says happy 21st anniversary, Martha. So very proud of you. So that's from Rosalind.
The 11. I just made 11. May 3rd was my 11th.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the 21st anniversary. I was like, wait, are you celebrating another anniversary? We should know about the 11th anniversary. Yes. So that's amazing. And you haven't really talked about, like, except for your coworkers being surprised, like, how did your family deal with all this? And I'm very curious. As I mentioned before we went on, I have several people in my life who are dear, loved people in my life who are struggling with depression. And I'm very curious from the perspective of somebody who's been deeply depressed and hit it well, obviously, until you couldn't anymore. What's your best advice to those of us who feel very helpless and are not sure what to do to help somebody who is either resistant to resistant meaning they won't go into treatment, or the treatment's not really working for them, and what was helpful to you in your experience? Because obviously this is a huge subject, but I'm just curious as to, from your personal experience, what do you find is helpful for those of us on the outside to help somebody who's deeply depressed?
I've been asked that question many times, and it's always a tough one to answer. I think for myself, my husband, who quite frankly I would have dumped me years ago, because he's in line for sainthood as far as I'm concerned, but he didn't try to fix me. He just stayed quiet with me. He didn't ignore me. He was very concerned. My family was very concerned. But nobody was trying to like slap me around and say, you can do this. You're strong. You can get it. They got the gravity of the situation. And I think that's what family members should do, if possible, to understand that this is a medical illness. If that very loved person had cancer, there'd be like what can I bring you some food, or what can I do to help you? And you need to take the afternoon off, or you need to rest, I'll take the kids, or whatever. But you kind of equate it to a very serious illness that is accepted, or embraced, I guess would be the word. I think, honestly, I hope this doesn't sound too sophomoric, but you can only love. You can only show love for that person. You can't start lecturing. You can support with, well, I heard, like my sister did, Martha, she knew I'd given up on those meds, and they're all worried, like, what the hell is she gonna do now? She's not taking her meds. So she offered up this ad about TMS, and fortunately I had the hearing for it, the listening for it. But it's not like you should go see your therapist more often, or it should be none of this stuff. It should be very gentle, firm, fair, loving help, and not even help. No one, you feel so helpless, I know, so you feel like you want to help. But I think putting the word support is a much more powerful and positive place to come from, that would probably be more received by a patient. So that saying to them, I'm trying to support you. I'm not trying to help you. I'm trying to support you to get through this. Putting it in the context of support, as opposed to, let's just get you fixed. No.
Right. Yeah. And it's yeah, not in an attempt to change the person. It's like, are you just trying to be there in the moment with them? But at the same time, I just provide resources, or, hey, I read
validate. You have
yeah.
to validate that person. You
Yeah.
have to validate and say, I know I haven't experienced what you're experiencing, but I know that you're in pain. I see that. I feel that. I love you so much that I am right here with you, feeling this pain. I'm sorry I can't feel it in the same way that I know that I understand completely. But validating and saying, acknowledging, I get it. You're ill. You have an illness, and we're going to get through this, because it is an illness. It's not in your head. It's not anything you're imagining, and I'm here to support you.
Wow, that takes a lot of self-control too, right? Because from the standpoint of somebody who's watching somebody suffer, and especially if that person doesn't want to get help, and is potentially, suicidal, it's like, it's got to be it's very, very, very hard to do.
Yeah. Well, now, if the person is not supportable, if the patient is not supportable, then you got to ramp it up and get either intervention, or make sure they get to a doctor. Make sure that they don't go close the door to their bedroom and not come out for 3 weeks. There has to be, and I don't know how interventions work now, but I think they've kind of perfected the art of the intervention, so it's not quite as imposing or scary.
Right.
But you have to understand that someone's life is on the line.
Yeah.
Someone's life is on the line.
Yeah.
And it is so frustrating when someone's not supportable. Believe me, I've had a couple of them in my own life, and it's like, you want to say, don't you know how much people love you? Don't you know how important you are to this world? Look what you've done in your world thus far. Don't you get that matters, that it matters, that you matter? And so that kind of conversation can happen. Maybe it has to happen from not a family member, because sometimes you have these dysfunctional families where anything they say is going to be like, oh, I can't hear that. This is just my sister yakking at me again,
Right. I'm going to tune around. Yeah.
In one ear, out the other. Whereas if it's someone that is respected, a friend or a professional that can sort of put that hearing distance in there, that might be the answer.
Yeah. So it sounds like, be there in the moment, in the pain with them, acknowledge it, even if you've never experienced it, just help them understand you get it. You get that they're in pain, and you're with them, and you want to support them in any way you can. But if you see them kind of going down and, being a danger to themselves, it's even if they're resistant to your help, it's time to
dial it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing you might want to say, or anyone might want to say to a family member, hey, you know what? If you came home today and told us your doctor said you had a brain tumor, or don't you think, or breast tumor, cancer, don't you think we'd be here for you with that? Well, this is the same thing. Put it in context of you don't have cancer, you've got this depression. It's the same thing. Let's work together. You would want to have us help you fight your cancer. Now, a really depressed person might say, no, I wish I had cancer and die. That's going to be how they're going to flip it around. But then you can say, yes, I understand that you feel like you don't want to survive cancer, but guess what? We're going to be here to help you do it as best we can.
Right.
But putting it in a context of a physical illness that's acknowledged, as opposed to, because a lot of people have shame with depression. I know I did. I still do. This is not it's not something to be bragging about. So, you got to understand that embarrassment, that shame, that wanting to withhold what the feelings really are is part of the mix. And so,
yeah, that's beautifully said. So I can't top that. That's except Cindy comments, you matter and you are loved. That's the message. And I think sometimes somebody who is so down and out that they want to take away their lives feel like they're a burden to others, and that they need to be reminded you matter.
Right. That's it. The burden part is huge. And I felt that. I felt like I am a load. I am a load of a wife. I'm a load of a mother. And I should spare them having to carry me as the load. And so, that's part of the thinking of a depressed person that needs to be understood and dealt with. Yeah,
life is not going to be better without you in our lives, in the world. And just even if you can't feel that right now that your life is important, that it's worth living, like, we want to help you feel like living again, would support you in any way we can. So, wow, this is such important information. What is the last thing, if I was going to have you leave our listeners, our viewers with anything, what's the message you want to leave them with when it comes to depression and treatment-resistant depression, and just and supporting people with that, and supporting yourself?
I think the message I would hope that everyone can hear is that there is hope, even when you feel the most hopeless. Embracing the possibility of coming out of this horrible place, that it's possible. I love, and we were talking about Andrew Solomon and the Noonday Demon. That quote: "The opposite of depression is not happiness; it is vitality of life." So, just having in your mind, or being able to somehow get to that place of embracing the possibility that there is an answer. It may not be TMS, it might be, something else, but finding the tool that works for you first. No, owning the illness is the most important, for what it is.
Yeah.
That it's dangerous, that it's medical. Finding the tool that will help you manage that illness, and embracing the possibility that you can be hopeful, that you can survive this dreadful illness, is what I would hope that people can get in their head.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you. so much for being here and sharing your story and being so open and vulnerable with us about your story and your mission coming out of your personal experience is so critical for so many people who are suffering right now from depression, and just that you persevered and you were open and you took a chance on a new treatment, and it worked for you, and you're really educating us about what this is and how it has impacted your life. So thank you for your mission and for sharing it with our viewers today. And I'm going to put your website and a link to your book in the comments today. I'm also
Ellen, also, if anyone needs to or is thinking about it or wants to know more about it or is in their journey right now, I can be contacted at Martha Rhodes TMS at gmail.com. I try to answer those emails within 24 to 36 hours, and I'd be more than happy to continue the conversation for someone who wants to drill down a little bit deeper. Okay.
Wow, that is so generous of you. I will add your email address to the comments as well, so people know that they can contact you. So thank you once again for being there today. And thank you everybody who, Cindy says, the strongest woman I know. Thank you to all of our viewers who showed up live. Don't forget to check out the links I'll be putting in the comments. And well, you're all already here, so you already qualify for a book. So thank you for that. And if you enjoy these videos and interviews, please watch for more coming weekly. Until then, be well and stay safe, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.